Hey everyone, welcome back to our Black Hills home. In this video, I will be building a 10 by 36 rock parking pad next to my garage. Before I could start any dirt work, I had to remove this existing 8 by 12 concrete pad. For this task, I rented a gas-powered jackhammer, which worked great to break down the concrete into much more manageable chunks. I'm sure some of you are thinking, why go through all the work to break up perfectly good concrete? I would have kept it, but unfortunately it was cracking in spots and it was sloping toward the garage foundation, which meant water flowed towards the garage instead of away. So it needed to go. Once I had a couple feet of concrete broke up, I used a crowbar to remove a small section. This provided a little relief for the next section, which prevented the bit on the hammer from going through the concrete and pinching it so tight that I couldn't remove it. Once I had the concrete broke up, I loaded it up and hauled it to the dump. This was quite a load for my little trailer. Now that I had the old concrete out of the way, I could mark the layout of the new pad. As I mentioned in a previous video, I traded in my 5x10 enclosed trailer for a 7x14 utility trailer. This meant I needed a little bigger parking pad to accommodate the new trailer. I made it a little bigger than I needed to, just in case we ever buy a boat or just need more parking space in the future. I marked the corners of the pad with some metal stakes, then I used some spray paint to mark the edges. Now that I had my layout, I could start on the dirt work. I borrowed a friend's skid steer to do the heavy lifting here. I wanted to remove the top 6 inches of dirt. This would get rid of any organic matter and give me a solid base for the pad. Once I was close to the depth I needed, I tried to pack down the pad with the skid steer as much as possible. Then I followed up with a wheelbarrow and a shovel to clean up the spots that I couldn't get to with the skid steer. Then I called it a night. The next day, I rented a dump trailer and headed for the hills to pick up some rock. Alright, just got loaded up. Got about little over 5 ton rock, definitely more than I will need, but it never hurts to have extra, and I don't want to have to make another trip. Sorry, this road's kind of bumpy, so my voice is probably up and down here, but got kind of a lot planned today. So far I'm ahead of schedule, so that's always a good start. gonna go dump this load on the driveway and then load up some of that dirt that I dug up yesterday, and then I'm gonna head over and get some base course to go down. Then hopefully I can get this trailer returned, and my goal is to have the drainage pipes run, the frame around the parking pad done, and hopefully a layer of gravel over the top and packed down. It's looking like tomorrow we're probably going to get some severe storms, so the more I can get done today, the better. So it's going to be a long day, but like I said, I'm ahead of schedule, so we're starting out pretty good. Let's get going. Alright, let's get started on the border for the pad. I decided to use green treated landscape timbers for the border of the pad. I started on the end and cut the timber to the correct length. Now that I had the right length, I cut a notch on the end so that I could tie this timber to the next with a half-lap joint. This will make the border a little stronger and prevent any future shifting. Then I cut a couple pieces of rebar to size. I use these as spikes to keep the border secure in its location and to connect the timbers together. I placed the timber in its location and did a little fine tuning to the dirt along the edges. Once I had that done, I started to lay a layer of gravel down for the timber to sit on. I wanted the border to be as level as possible and still be relatively even with the lawn that surrounds it. This gravel will also prevent the border from sinking over time. I had to dry fit the timber in place a few times and add gravel to any low spots. Once I had it leveled off and thoroughly packed down, I pounded a few stakes in to hold the timber in place. I then repeated this process for the next 3 timbers. As you can see in the video, I already set the drain pipe for the downspouts here. I will go over how I did those later in the video. I probably technically didn't need a border for this pad, but it'll keep the rock and gravel from washing out into the lawn. Plus, it'll look way cleaner with the border. I chose to use treated timbers rather than concrete or other types of borders here because it was the least expensive and the least time-consuming option. All done with the border. I think it looks pretty good so far. Now that the border is finished, I can start filling the pad in with base coarse gravel. I would dump a load or 2 of gravel with the skid steer, then I used a shovel and rake to even out the gravel across the pad. I left the gravel layer about 2 inches below the finished height of the border, just to account for the rock that would follow. This is a bit of a tedious task, but it has to be done so that I don't have any low spots that collect water whenever it rains. I sprayed the gravel down with water to help pack it down and to keep the dust down. Then I used a plate packer to pack the gravel down. Now that I have 3/4 of the pad packed down, I can get started on the downspout drainage on this side. I purposely didn't do the drainage until now because I knew that I would have to drive over it numerous times with the skid steer and didn't want the weight of the skid steer and gravel to break the pipe. After cutting the pipe to the correct length and sliding it in place, I then used some PVC primer and glue to attach a 90-degree long-turned elbow to the pipe. Followed up with a short piece of pipe to act as a spacer to get the correct height I needed to match up with the downspout. Next, I attached a T-cleanout fitting with the gutter insert already attached. The cleanout wasn't really necessary, but I like the idea of being able to unscrew the plug here in case the pipe ever gets plugged and needs to be snaked, rather than having to completely remove the downspout. Now that I have everything attached, I can run a quick test by dumping a bucket of water into the eaves. Quick note, whenever running drain pipe, it's important to make sure that the pipe slopes down at least 1/4 inch per foot. And here comes the water. I also checked to make sure there are no leaks where I connected the downspout. The test was successful, so I started covering the trench with some gravel. I also used some gravel in the part of the trench that went out into the grass, just to help keep the pipe in place. Then I used a little dirt and the original sod to cover this part of the trench up. The sod stuck up a little higher than the surrounding grass, but this is okay because after some time the dirt will settle a little bit and I'll come back through this fall and fill it as needed. Now that the pipe is laid, I can fill the rest of the pad up with gravel and once again level everything off with the rake and shovel. I had a few low spots in areas, so I added a little extra gravel to fill in those spots. One more pass with the plate packer before I add the rock. Finally, we can start adding the rock. Like the gravel, I dumped a couple buckets of rock on the pad, then smoothed everything out with a metal rake. I chose not to use plastic or fabric weed barrier between the gravel and the rock, because I haven't had very good luck with it in the past. I may regret not using it in the future, but nothing a little Roundup can't take care of. Finally, a little bath, followed up with another round of the packer. This parking pad turned out great. I have plenty of room for my trailer now, and I don't have to move it every time I need to mow. It definitely feels good to check this project off my to-do list. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button, and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos in the future. On to the next project.